we go. Okay. Should we make a start? So for those who know me, I'm Abby, and it's good to see you again. And for those who don't, I'm Abby, and I'm a PhD student at UCL in the AMOP group, and I'm a theoretical physicist. And I am the coordinator of the Women in Physics group, along with Professor Carla Faria, who's also here today. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the first meeting of 2021. I really would like to apologise for the fact that we didn't do much over the last year. As you're all aware, last year was mental. It was completely unexpected, the pandemic, and it snuck up on me and made me had to prioritise other things. So I do apologise, and I really hope you guys will enjoy the ride over the next year of Women in Physics activities. Just to say, we've got this talk planned. We have another one next week. We also have 2 other speakers also lined up in the future, and also a couple of panel sessions that I'm putting together about life after doing a physics master's and PhD, so other fields which might be interesting. So hopefully over the next this spring and summer term, we can join together and learn about some interesting things. So the first thing is I would like to say hello and welcome back. And I am so delighted to announce this, oh, I've dropped my AirPod. These are the new logos for the Women in Physics group, made and created by our very own Dr. Alyssa Silva, who is teaching fellow in quantum tech CDT at the LCN here at UCL. And I believe she is here right now. So thank you so much for these. And I can't wait to use them on all of the marketing material. And I think, Alyssa, would you like to say a few words just to say hi?
Hi. I don't know that there's much more to say. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Yes, is what I'm gonna leave it at that too. Oh, thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Leah. I look forward to these Women in Physics sessions. And,
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just so honoured that you made these for us, and they're stunning. I wish I had the graphic skills like yourself. It was just amazing. Oh, so thank you.
Stop it, Abby. Thank you. Okay, I will now disappear. Okay. Thank you.
The other thing that I'd like to start doing in these Women in Physics sessions is advertising any opportunities, scholarships, positions, whatever, from anyone who wants to put them in, because obviously this is a good way to reach women and underrepresented groups and show them that there are opportunities available. So for this session, I would like to advertise the 2 positions in our group. So if you take this position or know somebody who wants a position like this, they'll get to work with me and Professor Faria, which is incredibly exciting. So at the moment, we've got a PhD position available and a postdoc. So the email address on the bottom is to Carla, who would be your manager. And if you'd like to email her for more information, you're more than welcome to. And feel free to drop me an email if you want to know what it's like working in our group. And the same with Cornelia, who is co-hosting this evening. So anyway, without further ado, oh, actually, yeah, the other thing I was going to say is suggestions. So if you want to advertise something, if you want to suggest events or speakers, feel free to contact me. Or if you want to volunteer to run a session or an event, just let me know. If you want to do collaborations, please just send me emails, because it's always great to have ideas, and it's rather than just me sitting upstairs and going, who should I pester on Twitter to do a talk for me? So please feel free to contact me. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Priyanka Dasgupta. And Priyanka is absolutely wonderful. And today she's doing a wonderful talk on communicating women in science on equality and equity. And so I met Priyanka this summer when she had a small stint at UCLQ. But Priyanka's story of how she got into science communication is absolutely wonderful. So she started communicating science. So she just started communicating science at CERN. So that's a pretty cool job. She did a master's at Imperial College London recently, where she's also worked as a science communicator in India, Belgium, and in London. But before that, she has a master's in zoology. This talk is going to highlight to how did she switch from, okay, she's written 3 words which are really difficult to pronounce for me: genomics, metagenomics, and epigenetics to science communication. And also we're going to delve into how does diversity feature in sci-comm? Why is social awareness required in science communication? And what we will do is, this talk is a talk, but there's actually some stages where it's up for discussion, and there's a poll, and also a kind of spot the difference situation after we watch a video. So it's really interactive. So feel free to watch the talk, but during the case studies, if you have any comments or queries, feel free to raise your hand and or write in the chat, and then we'll hopefully be able to answer your questions or debate your comments. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over. So hopefully this will work.
Yes, I think that should work. And thank you, Abby, for introducing me so wonderfully. And yeah, as she gave a brief overview of what or who I am already. And as she said, that this is going to be pretty much interactive. So feel free to just drop in with your comments or with any interesting insights that you might have as well. So, just to begin with, that I am Priyanka Dasgupta, and as she said, that I started. Yes, so that's a brief overview of me, and as Abby very succinctly pointed out, that I started with a master's in zoology. So I do have a scientific background in genomics, metagenomics, and epigenetics, biology. But then I kind of got interested and got hooked onto sci-comm and started joining competitions and just speaking at events and stuff like that. And from there on, I began working in science communication full time. So I worked in India in a center called Vikram Sarabhai Community Science Center. And then I moved to Belgium. I worked at the Royal Zoological Society of Antwerp for a little time. Then I decided to study it properly. And that's when I ended up in London at Imperial to study it properly, and got myself a master and a wonderful internship at UCLQ during that time. So that's where I've met Abby and got introduced to the Women in Physics group. And yeah, I mean, she's already given you a gambit of the amazing work they already do. And I'm honored to be really speaking here and sharing my views with this amazing group. And so the latest thing that I'm doing right now is I'm a communication and marketing fellow at CERN. Yeah, and that's just a bit about me. But what I want to talk about today is my job as a communicator is not just to communicate science, because science is not devoid of the scientist. And when I'm doing that, when I'm conveying my stories, when I'm conveying the story of a scientist doing that science, or the societal context they live within, it is important for me to be aware of these contexts and proceed with awareness about these contexts. These could be societal constructs or different issues like misrepresentation or discrimination or or other socioeconomic divides. Because if I'm communicating something, I'm communicating a portrayal of whatever topic as it exists in this world. And I'm communicating it to someone either in the present or in the future, right? So when they're looking back or when they're looking at that moment, my job, while primarily being about communicating science, is also to make sure that I don't whitewash this world that my story exists in, and convey its characters responsibly and with respect. So, one of those aspects, one of the many different aspects of these societal constructs that I thought would be interesting to speak about is the concept of equity as compared to equality. And so that's going to be the focus of this talk, and how it lends itself into communicating stories about science, especially stories about women in science. So when we talk about equality for women, right, or for other historically subjugated groups for that matter, we intend to say that the resources and products of this society be equally accessible to these groups as they are to their more privileged counterparts. And this is the equitable balancing of skills, and this is what we should be aiming for. So I will just take to explain this concept a bit more visually. I have, which is okay. So if we start with the top left one, which is inequality. So inequality would be that the favor or the merits of the society are tilted unequally towards one aspect of society, and they're reaping the fruits of that tree of benefits. If we give them equal treatment, that is coming to the right side of the slide, equality would be giving them both the same ladder, giving them both exactly the same opportunities and saying, yes, you're free to do. But still, it doesn't remove the skewed nature of the opportunities available at the end point. So even if you're providing them with a ladder, the person on the right still isn't able to equally reach the fruit, let's say. But equity would be an equitable treatment would be designing custom tools and identifying and addressing that inequality in the end goal itself, so that both of them, so it might not be that we're giving them the exact same ladder, we're giving them two different ladders, two different treatments, two different opportunities or scale of opportunities, but we're making sure that the end benefits are being available to both of them. So this could be also seen in another way where it's not just about reaching a goal, but accessing something. So as you can see, the same treatment would be giving them all the same standing box. The equitable treatment would be ensuring that all of them are able to see over that barrier. And the last is that the barrier itself, the systemic barrier, could be removed, and there would be equality. But in this case, when we talk about social injustices or gender gaps, let's say, in this case, the systemic barrier is hundreds and hundreds of years of patriarchal perspectives. So I think it's fair to say that it'll take a tad bit longer to remove the systemic barrier. And just to give you an idea of how long it might be, according to the World Economic Forum, the gender gap won't close entirely until 2133. Now that's 112 years from now. And I think this was some years ago, and the latest statistics is that in our lifetimes, in 100 years, we won't be able to see gender parity happen. So that's how long we'll have to wait for this gap to close. So while we wait for this systemic barrier to be removed, the path at the moment that needs to be taken is the equitable treatment path. Okay. So that was my part about explaining the concept of equity and equality and why we need to shift, or we need to understand the importance of equity. Now that I've highlighted the concept, I will now take some time, and the gist about it, what needs to be done about is just to share ideas and grow together. So now I will move to a segment where I will take this concept and see how this applies in practice. So I've taken 3 case studies and we'll go over it, and it will be more of this discussion session which Abby pointed out. And so it's more reflexive. So let's see what these 3 case studies look like and how the concepts of equity and equality can be translated while communicating these stories. So the 3 case studies that I've taken is, one would be an instance where I have to write an article and then I have to decide who to feature. The second case study would be about exhibitions and how to deal. So it's an example from Science Museum London, and what to do or how to represent women during exhibitions, let's say. And the third would be a media representation of scientists. So for example, when I am doing a documentary or if I'm doing a feature video, how do I address men and women in my interviews or films? Is there a difference or is there no difference, or we'll see. So the first case study. So this is one of the teams from CERN. I've taken it from one of the teams who invented or contributed to developing this HEV ventilator. So that's with them. But just as an example, let's say this is a team of scientists and they've done this amazing discovery. And now I want to interview two of these. I want to do an article where I take quotes from two of them. So there are four people and I need to, what do you think? So at this point, if we could do a poll and see who do you think I should pick out of these four people to feature in my interview?
Cool. I think we will. Oh, we've got a comment from Chetna, and they say nice example. So, right. Okay, a minute is over, and I'm going to end the poll, and I'm now going to share the results.
Yay! Amazing. I feel everyone in the audience would have been able to predict that this would be the answer that's most picked. And I mean, yeah, it's one man, one woman. And you guys are all either right in thinking that or it is an ideal selection. So, and I see 6% have also said whoever is first in the phone book, gender doesn't matter. That's a very idealistic viewpoint, and I admire you for being able to carry on with that. But so
we have a question.
Yeah, okay.
And this is from Sarah brackets Sally L. Price. Hello. Do all four have equal knowledge and expertise?
That's interesting as well. Yeah. So is that the full question?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So if that's okay with Sarah, I will include that comment when I'm explaining over this. But that is a good consideration. I mean, that definitely would be weighing in on who I decide to interview as well. Okay, so now that this is done, yes, I would take one man and one woman. But yes, as Sarah pointed out, there will be other considerations of who has most knowledge and are all of them at the same level of knowledge?
Yes. Excuse me for interrupting, but there is the possibility that the group dragged in a woman who's hardly associated with it to make the picture look better.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. So, I mean, if we look at the history of how the picture was taken, it might get more complicated and there would be, it is a possibility. I'm not denying that, but I honestly am not sure. So I will not try to comment on it without knowing the full story behind it. But yes, that is a possibility. And that I think is also a consideration to what we are trying to say, that trying to make it look like there is gender balance, we might also be dragging in people who might not have anything to do with it, just to give the illusion of being fair to everyone. But yeah, that's indeed a consideration. For this example, though, let's assume that these four people did have a lot to do with the project, which I think, which I hope is the case, that all of these four people had a lot to do with the project. And even in that case, your question still stands, that do all of them have equal knowledge? What I would do in that situation is but the thing is, you've already picked that. I already have it in my mind that I will take one woman and one man. So I will not, so my one woman is already, that box is ticked. Now I will figure out who out of these three will I choose to feature in the article. So in that consideration, if my finishing line is the article being done, in that, as I said, I will already have picked the woman, but out of the men, I will figure out who has most knowledge, who is the team leader maybe, or is there someone who has done something specific, and I will apply these considerations only to these three people, and out of them I will select one. And this might seem unfair to a lot of people, and that's the issue that I want to talk about, that that this doesn't mean that so even if this seems unequal, this doesn't mean I'm giving an unfair advantage to the woman, which let's say in an idealistic world would be the case. But when we are communicating science and communicating science in a place where we are aware of these social constructs, that's the thing. We don't need to be, I mean, it would be nice to be aware of the society that this absolute measures exist in. So my choosing the woman already is a small step in balancing those scales that have already been tilted for a very long time. So for example, if at this point the starting points looks like it's here, where I'm pitting only three people against each other and just selecting one automatically. But if we look at the historical starting lines, the historical background of it all, can you guys do? Okay, perfect. So the second line would be the starting point for a lot more women who've not even made it to the first line. And these women, there would be those who have disappeared in that race because of the other pressures of society, that like work taboos or child marriage or poor gender infrastructures or lack of education. And so they've not even been able to make it to the first starting point, the yellow line, from where you are now seeing the spitting of three men against one woman. So yeah, so when I'm picking the woman first, I am just trying to balance out this historical skewedness of scales.
Can I just
Yes,
put
yes.
in as well, Priyanka? There was an interesting comment as well in the chat. So Steve Miller mentioned, being presented with just a team, I would choose one man and one woman initially. But if I then found out more about the team by interviewing my initial selection, I might alter my strategy. I might interview just a woman. Let's not leave out the equation that the men have forced their way into the limelight historically, which is basically what you touched on as well with the different starting lines for men and women. But I just thought I should put in this comment as well because it fits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So at this point, I would like to also point out, so see, that is actually very good that you start off with a strategy. You start off with the strategy that, okay, you will take one man, one woman, and then you do the interview and you realize, okay, so it can go one of either ways, right? So one, you realize, okay, these are two knowledgeable people and I'm sticking with my choice. The other would be, okay, both of these people know nothing and I need to alter my strategy. And these are just, as you said, more of eye candy than actual contributors. So it might be that, so of course metal will be like, I will definitely see the worth. It won't be just for keepsakes. But so if I see at that point that it is that someone else does have that priority over the two people that I have initially gone for, I will make that choice and I will go for someone else, and it could be both men, and that's not a problem. But what I'm trying to say is that the initial could be, or when we are when we are writing these articles, we could try to give a platform to the less represented groups. It doesn't have to be that we have to just do it for the sake of doing it. If they have nothing to do with it, I completely agree. It is not right to do that, because then it's just a facade then. But yeah, I'm just saying that it could be a consideration when I'm writing my articles. Yeah, but thanks for that comment. And so I will move on to, oh yeah, this was also there, that even at the first, even at this starting point, then there are yet another set of challenges which are equally applicable to men and women and other genders as well, which I mean is a fair set of, not a fair, but which is an unfair set of challenges that everyone has to go through again. Yeah. And the second case study is kind of similar, so I won't give this too much of an introduction, but it's based on the same idea that when we are, so for example, this is an example from the Science Museum London, and they have galleries, right? They value science in general, and still they did a women in science tour. Now, this giving this a specialized tour or specialized way of highlighting subjugated groups is just another way to bring to prominence groups that have been ignored so long, let's say. So to bring them back into the limelight. And this does not mean that we need to have a men's tour as well. It just means that, yes, I think I am repeating myself now, but it just means that we kind of need to highlight one that has not received that spotlight for so long. And with that, I will move on to the last case study 3, which is an interesting exercise for you as well, which will be, I will not say anything about it, but I will start a video. And the exercise would be to see if you find a difference in the way the men who are interviewed in this have some sort of difference in treatment to the women who are interviewed in this. Yeah, and we'll see. It could be that there's no difference. It's just for something. And that was it. At this point, if anyone has any comments or would like to just jump in, that would be very welcome. We'll just give a minute to see if there are any people who are interested in pointing out. Yeah, I see.
Thing I would say is about the filming, because they were filming Brian Cox in the 3rd episode much more than the person that was speaking.
Yeah.
While the other men, they were just filmed by themselves. But if you look at the cameraman or the camera person, I don't know if he was a man, I'm assuming he was a man, but maybe I'm sexist, was filming Brian Cox much more than the person who was speaking.
Yeah.
And this is probably unconscious, but this is something that was devaluing her contribution.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, that's the thing. Like, I don't think anyone tries to do this consciously, but as you said, subconsciously, we end up doing these things which kind of on retrospect look very weird. And you're very right that the men got full frames, close-up shots to themselves, and when it came to Faith, it was like filmed with Brian Cox. No, but that's an interesting one. I'll go over them together as well. But if anyone else noticed something else, thanks. Yeah,
I would like to say something, and it's adding on to something that has been written in the comments.
Okay.
So Leah has put, Professor Dowker taught me foundations of quantum mechanics, and she's way more passionate than that segment. I also have spent time with Professor Dowker, and she's a very wonderful woman. She has a very quirky sense of humor, and she is way more passionate, and she's just as fun and kooky, or whatever you want to describe it as, these men. So to see her like this in this kind of demure setting where Brian Cox is just kind of nodding at her is, to me, incredibly out of character, and paints her just as a physicist, and no additional traits or personalities which these men were lucky enough to be able to exhibit in this segment. And I just think that's not fair, that a woman has to be a physicist first and then a person possibly else, where men are just assumed physicists and therefore they can also have a personality. And yeah, that's my my take. And I think Leah saying that she had more passion just shows that the people who've met her know that that's a bit odd. So
that's absolutely a brilliant insight, and I will touch upon that. Cornelia, did you also have something to say? Sorry.
Yeah, I was also jumping over first to mention Leah's comment, which Abby took over, but then also just something that Abby quickly mentioned was like Brian Cox sitting there and confirming, almost as if it needed a man to support the fact that whatever this woman is saying is actually valid. It gave kind of a weird vibe to me of like, just the man can be as goofy as they want and they're still believed. But if there's a woman talking, there needs to be a man. I mean, he's not repeating it, the standard like classic stereotype of meetings, but he is still there to just say yes, 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 which it just felt weird to me.
No, that's absolutely, that's a very correct thing that you have noticed. So yes, so that's kind of what I was going to say, that it's a good production. It's a very good production, and I'm sure the subject matter they covered was excellent. And I haven't really gone into the review ratings of it, but I'm sure it would have been a good production. But that's what I'm saying, that even in such good scientific productions, sometimes, so say, for example, the person who was directing it, or say, because it's not just Brian Cox or these 5 people who are in the production, there's a huge team working on this. And it's surprising that in this huge team, no one realized what they were doing at that point, or perhaps they realized, but as you said, that we have stereotypical ways of filming people. Because for I'll just come back to the video and jump to that point where we just see the frame setting of these people. So for example, the guy is open, it's at eye level or at mid shot level, and it's casual, it's he's just having a chat with Brian Cox, and whatever he says is valid. And then there is another one, let's say, again, close up shot at eye level, he's looking down on someone and it's fine, and he's smiling, and there's a quirky air about it, there's personality there. And at the same time, uh, at the opposite contrast of it, when the woman's shot starts, it's almost, we've shifted to a romantic setting almost. It's shot with Brian Cox, they taking a walk along the park, and there are geese, they're walking over a river, and then after all, they're sitting under a tree in a picnic spot. And as you very well pointed out, he's Brian Cox is there still nodding along, and she is portrayed as the serious person. A serious person equals serious science, and that is what they're going for, and that is just reflective of how we can take it for granted that when a man, and I am really sorry to say this, but it is kind of the perspective that we also take. So when a man is saying something, we take for granted that yes, he's already a scientist, so that's not in the question at all. So what he's saying, we will build on that. But for a large part of the audience, not necessarily you or me or other people who have seen women doing science around them, but for another large subset of people, the priority for the director here is to first drive home the fact that she can be a scientist. And the quirks come a lot later. And in doing that, because there is only a fixed amount of time, they choose the seriousness, the scientist garb of it over personality. And that's just a very, very sad compromise to make, because as I said, it's not just what you are saying right now, but when you look back at it in the past, and it's confirmed by Abby and sorry, I've forgotten the name, Leah, or but whoever was supervised by Professor Dawker. I mean, this is not her personality at all then. And it's just compressed into this form that needs to fit the bill of a woman scientist, not just a scientist, but a woman scientist. And yeah, and the treatment of it as well, a romanticized treatment versus a very quirky, energetic, like full on blast on setting. So these are not explicitly harmful, but in the long run, they are not exactly harmful, but they veer on the edge of stereotypification. I don't know how I said that, but stereotypification. And the problem with that is it reduces personality. If I'm a young scientist watching this, I will always try to mush out my personality to make into that, or I will not take, or I will, if I am intrigued by the personality, my role models or my role models would become the men who obviously seem more attractive because of the personality that they exude from in these pictures. And that kind of contributes to this problem of giving platform to women and making women scientists at the same level that we're trying to portray men scientists at. And yeah, so that was If someone else has had a comment or another insight in that time. Yes, Cornelia, please go on.
Yeah, I'm again quoting from the chat. There, Carla started mentioning this is like this is also often meant as a supporting comment in like mentoring or in like supporting women in science, and like, yeah, you have to appear more serious, you have to like be confident, you have to blah blah blah, and this ends up being kind of a fix the women approach to diversity inclusion rather than recognizing that there are things wrong in the system, and the long-term goal should be to try and not have to fix individual people. Carla, if you want to jump in yourself as well.
Yes, I would like to say that this fix the women or lean in issue is really problematic, because you hear this all the time, that you have to behave in a certain way if you want to be successful, and that you have to exhibit certain personality traits that will make people take you seriously. Okay. And one thing that you are not going to realize, because she's a white woman, but often I'm whitewashed in videos which are more serious. And this is something that happens to you. And a lot of people do this unconsciously because of this association of how a scientist should look.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that because that is just spot on. That is spot on. Yes. Yeah, and I mean, yes, that is another issue of this the color issue, which kind of also feeds into of how we look and what we assume to have a higher authority or an agency.
Exactly. Because let's say your skin is light, but it's not white, then sometimes you have videos in which they bleach you so much that your lipstick looks yellow. And it is unconscious, is exactly because of these
Yeah, this is internalized, and that's why, because
this is internalized.
doing
This is racism that is internalized because they want to make you more authoritative. And when other women tell you also that you have to be more serious and you have to appear like what the public perceives to be a proper scientist, this means also that this is a very sad and stereotypical way, which has nothing to do with the science that you're actually working on.
yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And I think we were talking about this during the practice session as well. That, and the sad thing is that we end up believing it ourselves that we are doing something wrong because we're not being serious, and that is much more harmful. That it's okay. It's not even okay. It's needed to have that personality imbued in yourself and not fit a particular look or a particular style to just be that way. And so that's where I think when we are communicating science or when we are writing articles or doing videos and stuff, that's where I think it's not essential to the short term goal, but in long term, in feeding to the discourse that goes around in this world, in trying to inspire people, or being that little I don't know, flapping of the butterfly's wings that starts the tornado. We are doing something, and if we are conscious of those actions, it's good to try and avoid those and try to be more equitable in doing that. Yes, and that was the last case study. And with that, I will just wrap up by saying that the way ahead would be to be mindful. We have to be aware of stuff like this and be mindful in our own communications, as I said, because when we become aware of these differences in nuances, and because this room right here, whoever is listening or attending, and the people you know, will go on to create the future, they will be the creators of tomorrow, and how we carry forth from then on will set the stage for future generations. So the first thing that is needed is we need to keep educating ourselves, and it will be a constant evolution. There's never going to be, okay, this is the right way and that this will be the right way for the next 100 years. No, we'll learn more stuff about the problems with the approach that we are taking now, perhaps. And that's when we need to be open to communication and open to including those in our approaches. The second would be to involve people in conversation, which is when we have a dialogue and when we get to learn more about the other approaches and see and compare. And involve men, women, and other genders. So it's not just if this is a women's issue, it should be only women doing it, which I think you are all pretty aware of it, and I don't need to be telling that to you, but we need to involve more people in the conversation. And lastly is more of a self-help thing, is that we need to be patient and educate ourselves. So by patient, I don't mean say, let's be patient, the world will change. No, we need to be active, we need to be proactive, but we need to be patient with mistakes. People, and even you will make mistakes while trying to do this. You correct them. It's tiring. There's no perfect way that, yes, this is the only way, and sometimes it can be so tiring. And you can check out. It's okay to check out, to reset, and then start again. And that's the way we need to be, that we need to move forward with empathy and with resolve. So yeah, and with that, I will end on this quote from quote, or like this definition from the UNES doc, and I will read it out so that people who are bored of reading can also access this. So, gender equality, equality between men and women, does not mean that women and men have to become the same, but that their rights, responsibilities, and opportunities will not depend on whether they were born male or female. Gender equity means fairness of treatment for men and women according to their respective needs. And this may include equal treatment or treatment that is different but which is considered equivalent in terms of rights, benefits, obligations, and opportunities. And yeah, that's it for me today. And thank you. And now the floor is open to discussion and questions. And if there were any clarifications or if any comments on building what I said.